Greetings. What I'm going to talk to you today about is the role of the attorney in the legal system. The attorney's role varies depending on the type of case that's involved. The case could be a criminal case, it could be a civil case, and also attorneys are engaged sometimes in the practice of preventative law to stop you from being involved in the court system at all. In the case of a criminal case, the attorney works as a defendant unless it's attorney for the prosecution. But typically in a criminal case, when we're talking about business who may be hiring an attorney, then the attorney has the role of representing the defendant and specifically forcing the state to prove its criminal case beyond a reasonable doubt. In a civil case, the attorney's role can be different. You typically have private attorneys on both sides. It's not the government involved unless it's a government contract or something like that. The standard of proof is different in that the plaintiff must prove the case by a preponderance of the evidence, which is just a little more likely than not. In the civil case, the typical remedy is money damages, although sometimes there can be a request for equitable remedies, such as an injunction. In a criminal case, the prosecution's job is to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, and then the penalty could include a jail sentence in addition to payment of fines. The last point that I make here is on the issue of preventative law. And the idea is that you consult with an attorney before you face a situation where you have to go to court, before there's a dispute, so that the attorney can work with you to make it so that you never end up in court. And that would be the ultimate goal. One of the issues that arises is attorney fees and how you pay an attorney. There are several different ways of paying an attorney. Attorneys can get paid hourly, which means then that any work that the attorney does on your behalf will be billed in 6 to 15-minute increments of an hour, depending on the attorney. In that case, whenever you contact the attorney, speak to the attorney by phone, send documents, anything like that, the attorney is being paid for that time by the hour. One of the ways that this is done is through a retainer. You hire the attorney and you pay the attorney a certain lump sum, and then the hourly fees are deducted from the retainer until the retainer is used up. Another way that attorneys are paid is by contingent fees. If you've ever heard the commercials on TV for, if you've had an accident, contact, blah, 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 attorney or law firm, those attorneys get paid on a contingent fee basis. So they'll say there are no upfront attorney fees. That is true. What happens instead is the attorney gets a percentage of the recovery. Typically, if the case does not go to trial, then the attorney will get 25%, perhaps 33 1/3%. If the case goes to trial, that amount can be as high as 40%. In those kinds of cases, the attorney is investing time on the likelihood that the case is worthy of the amount of time the attorney spends on that case. And then another alternative for attorney's fees is a set fee for services. So if you hire an attorney to do a certain task, let's say to handle an adoption, then the attorney requires a set fee for handling that adoption. Typically that's if the case is uncomplicated. If it becomes more complicated, then obviously the fees, that set fee can change. If you're hiring an attorney, you want to be clear on what the fees will be, and typically you need a written agreement rather than an oral agreement on those fees. Attorney-client privilege is a key concept in the idea of an attorney representing a client. The purpose is to encourage the client to be free to disclose all information positive or negative, so that the attorney can provide the best representation possible. There are two aspects of the privilege that I'm just going to briefly highlight: the duty of confidentiality and the duty to represent a client zealously. In the case of the duty of confidentiality, an attorney is prohibited from disclosing the information that the client provides, with only a very few exceptions. Again, if a client knows that the attorney cannot reveal information, then the client can feel comfortable disclosing all information, and then the attorney can provide the best representation given the information that the client has given. In addition, there's that duty to represent zealously. Our court system is an adversarial system, so the client is best protected if the attorney uses vigorous efforts to defend, not violating the law, obviously, but just vigorous efforts to represent the client's interests. Finally, just a few things about hiring an attorney. Many attorneys are generalists rather than specialists. However, you can certainly ask an attorney about his or her experience in handling the kind of case that you have. Although the attorney may be a generalist, attorneys still may have certain areas that they specialize in, and so to that extent they specialize in those things, then you want to make sure that attorney has some experience. There are also opportunities for attorneys to certify that they are specialists in certain areas. Again, especially if you have someone in patent law or other areas that are very specialized, securities law, you may look for those certifications. Third, you want to build a relationship with the attorney so that you can feel comfortable disclosing information. And if you're not comfortable with that attorney, regardless of what the reason is, then you might want to pick another attorney. You also may want an attorney that's more available. Typically, the larger the firm is, sometimes you're not consulting with the attorney, but with the attorney's assistant, which is fine. But in terms of building a relationship, you want to know how your case would be handled. And then you want to have clarity on the fees, and I mentioned that in the previous slide, but you want to have clarity on what the fees will be for this attorney representing you. Okay, so that gives you kind of a guide and an overview. As you read through the chapter, think about this, and of course feel free to come back and listen to parts that were confusing or unclear.